Every BMW comes with features that are meant to help you, but when they're turned on at the wrong time, they quietly start costing you money. Increases heat cycles, electrical load, and mechanical wear in the background, long before a warning light ever appears. Most owners assume that if BMW included it, it's always safe to use. That assumption is exactly why repairs show up early. You can see it in battery lifespan, idle behavior, fault logs, and long-term component wear. In this video, I'll break down 11 BMW features you should never turn on under the wrong conditions, because using them carelessly is how small stress turns into thousands in repairs. Let's start with the one almost everyone leaves enabled, even though it causes problems faster than people realize. Feature 1, Auto Start Stop on short trips. If most of your drives are under 15 minutes, Auto Start Stop should be turned off before you move. The feature feels harmless because nothing breaks right away. When you stop, the engine shuts off, then restarts smoothly as you release the brake. The car drives normally, which is why most owners leave it enabled. The problem is how it's used. Many owners rely on auto start-stop during cold trips like errands or heavy traffic. In those conditions, the engine never fully stabilizes. Oil pressure hasn't settled, and the electrical system is already under load. Each restart pulls a heavy electrical draw from the battery, while the starter is repeatedly engaged before ideal lubrication is restored. Over time, this constant cycling accelerates battery degradation and starter wear. It's not one restart that causes damage, it's dozens per day, repeated for months. Early signs usually appear before failure. Battery life shortens, cranking slows, electrical warnings appear and disappear. Auto start-stop becomes inconsistent. These aren't random faults. They're symptoms of an electrical system losing its reserve. The safer approach is simple. Turn auto start-stop off during short trips and stop and go driving. Leave it enabled only on longer drives once the engine is fully warm and stops are infrequent. If your BMW allows memory coding, setting it to default off removes the risk entirely. This takes seconds and costs nothing. Ignoring it often leads to a $300 to $500 battery replacement, a $600 to $1,200 starter repair, or more once electrical faults stack. The bill isn't just the part, it's the labor, coding, and secondary diagnosis. If most of your driving is steady highway use over 30 minutes, auto start-stop is far less harmful. The real damage comes from repeated cold cycling, not the feature itself. This is how one convenience feature quietly drains your BMW's electrical margin. Once that margin is gone, everything else starts acting unpredictable. Next, we'll look at a feature that keeps your BMW awake when it should be sleeping, and why that matters more than most owners realize. Feature 2. Comfort access that keeps the car awake. If your BMW has comfort access and you're dealing with battery issues, turn it off before assuming the battery itself is the problem. The feature feels harmless because it works quietly. You walk up, the car unlocks. You walk away, it locks. The issue is that comfort access constantly wakes modules to search for the key. When the system doesn't fully sleep, electrical draw continues in the background, especially on short trips or infrequent use. Over time, this drains the battery while the car is parked. Voltage drops, control modules become unstable, and faults appear in systems that seem unrelated. You'll notice shortened battery life, random warnings, or weak starts after the car sits. Many owners replace the battery only for the symptoms to return. The fix is situational use. Disable comfort access. If the car sits often, is driven short distances, or already shows electrical warnings, re-enable it only when the battery is healthy. The car is driven regularly. This takes seconds and costs nothing. Ignore it, and you're looking at a $400 to $600 battery replacement plus time spent chasing electrical faults. Feature 3. Sport or Sport Plus on a cold engine. For BMW that has Sport or Sport Plus modes, don't engage them until the engine is fully warm. These modes sharpen throttle response and hold higher revs, which feels good immediately. That's why many drivers turn them on as soon as they start driving. The mistake is using aggressive drive modes while the oil is still cold. At that point, lubrication hasn't fully reached tight clearance components like timing parts, turbo bearings, and valve train surfaces. Higher revs and sharper throttle demand more from the engine before it's protected. Over time, this accelerates wear that doesn't cause instant failure but shortens component life. You'll notice it later as rough cold starts, increased mechanical noise, or reduced smoothness once warm. These are early signs of wear, not normal aging. The fix is simple. Leave the car in comfort or eco mode for the first 10 to 15 minutes. Switch to sport only after oil temperature is stable, not just coolant temperature. This costs nothing and takes patience. Ignoring it can contribute to timing component wear, turbo issues, or valve noise that turns into four-figure repairs. The money isn't the mode, it's the labor and secondary damage. If you live in a warm climate and drive gently until warm, the risk is lower. Feature 4. Auto hold in stop-and-go traffic. If your BMW has auto hold enabled, don't leave it on in heavy stop-and-go traffic. The feature is designed to hold the brakes for you at a stop, so you don't need to keep your foot on the pedal. It feels convenient, especially in traffic. The problem is how often it activates. In slow traffic, auto hold repeatedly clamps and releases the brakes, sometimes dozens of times in a single drive. That creates extra heat and uneven wear in the braking system. Over time, this leads to premature rear brake wear, warped components, and stressed brake actuators. The damage doesn't show up immediately. It builds quietly and shows up later as brake noise, vibration, or shortened service intervals. You'll often notice a hot brake smell after traffic driving or rear pads wearing much faster than expected. These are signs the system is working harder than it should. The safer approach is situational use. Disable auto hold in stop-and-go traffic and use normal brake pressure instead. Re-enable it only for longer stops, hills, or situations where it actually reduces effort rather than increasing cycling. This takes seconds and costs nothing. Ignoring it can lead to brake jobs hundreds of dollars earlier than expected. The cost isn't just pads, it's rotors, labor, and additional wear from excess heat. If you drive mostly on open roads with infrequent stops, the risk is lower. The issue is constant activation, not the feature itself. Moving to suspension-related setting that feels smoother, but slowly wears parts you don't see until they start clunking. Feature 5. Adaptive suspension in sport on rough roads. If your BMW has adaptive suspension, don't leave Sport or Sport Plus enabled on rough roads. These modes stiffen the dampers, which feels controlled on smooth pavement. That's why many drivers leave them on. The problem is impact transfer. On uneven surfaces, stiff dampers pass more shock into bushings, mounts, and control arms instead of absorbing it. The stress is small but constant. Over time, this accelerates bushing wear, creates clunks, and shortens damper life. The damage builds quietly and shows up later as noise, vibration, or looseness. You'll notice harsher ride quality, knocking over bumps, or uneven tire wear. These are early warning signs. The fix is situational use. Keep the suspension in comfort on rough roads, and switch to sport only on smooth surfaces. This takes seconds and costs nothing. Ignoring it can lead to suspension repairs that reach four figures once labor and alignment are added. If you mostly drive on smooth roads, the risk is lower. The issue is stiffness combined with poor surfaces. Move away from the chassis and into a feature that stresses an expensive system most owners never connect to the cause. Feature 6. Automatic climate sync on maximum. If you leave your BMW's climate system permanently set to auto with aggressive temperature syncing, you're putting unnecessary strain on the system. Auto climate is designed to reach a target temperature as fast as possible, not as gently as possible. The problem is how hard it works. When the system is set to extreme hot or cold, the compressor, blower motor, and blend doors cycle aggressively and repeatedly, especially on short drives. Over time, this increases wear on the AC compressor, blend door actuators, and interior temperature sensors. The damage doesn't feel mechanical at first. It shows up as weak airflow, inconsistent temperatures, or clicking noises behind the dash. You'll often notice the fan ramping up and down constantly, or the AC running hard even on mild days. Those are signs the system is overcorrecting instead of stabilizing. The smarter approach is moderation. Use auto climate, but set smaller temperature differences and lower fan intensity once the cabin is close. Let the system maintain, not chase extremes. This takes a few seconds and costs nothing. Ignoring it can contribute to AC or actuator repairs that quickly reach four figures. The expensive part isn't just the component, it's dashboard labor. If you drive long distances in stable climates, the risk is lower. The wear comes from aggressive cycling on short trips. Different system, different type of damage. Next, we'll look at a setting that affects how your BMW learns your driving, and why leaving it unchecked can quietly make things worse. Feature 7. Lane Keep Assist with Steering Intervention. If your BMW has Lane Keep Assist with active steering correction, don't leave it fully enabled all the time. This system doesn't just warn you, it actively applies steering input to keep the car in lane. The issue is constant micro-corrections. On imperfect roads, construction zones, or worn lane markings, the system repeatedly nudges the steering back and forth. You may not feel it strongly, but the steering system does. Over time, this adds unnecessary workload to the electric power steering motor and steering rack. The wear is subtle and gradual, showing up later as vague steering feel, calibration faults, or assist warnings. You'll often notice small steering corrections you didn't ask for, or the wheel feeling slightly busy on straight roads. Those are signs the system is intervening more than it should. The better approach is selective use. Leave lane departure warnings on, but disable active steering correction unless you're on long, well-marked highways where it actually reduces driver input. This takes seconds to adjust and costs nothing. Ignoring it can contribute to steering system repairs that easily climb into four figures. The cost isn't just the motor, it's calibration and labor. Different kind of stress. Different system entirely. And the next feature doesn't touch steering, brakes, or suspension. Feature 8. Automatic headlight control in daytime driving. If you leave your BMW's headlights permanently set to auto, don't assume they're always off during the day. On many models, auto headlights still activate running lights, interior lighting, and rear lights far more often than owners realize. The issue is unnecessary electrical load. Changes in shadows, weather, tunnels, or overpasses repeatedly trigger the lighting system on and off. Each cycle pulls power and wakes supporting control modules. Over time, this adds wear to light control modules, shortens bulb and LED driver life, and increases background electrical demand, especially on cars already sensitive to voltage stability. You'll notice interior lighting flickering on and off during daytime drives, rear lights activating when they don't need to, or lighting-related fault messages later on. The smarter approach is intentional use. In clear daytime conditions, switch headlights off manually. Use auto mode at night or in poor visibility, not as a permanent default. This takes seconds and costs nothing. Ignoring it contributes to lighting module faults and electrical issues that are expensive mainly because of diagnostics and labor, not parts. If you drive mostly at night, auto headlights make sense. The problem is unnecessary cycling during the day. If this is useful, save it. These are the kinds of features that quietly cost BMW owners money because they feel normal. Feature 9. Always on driver. Assistance alerts. If your BMW has multiple driver assistance alerts enabled at all times, don't leave them all on by default. These systems rely on cameras, sensors, and control modules that constantly monitor the road, even when conditions don't require it. The issue is continuous sensor activity. Lane warnings, collision alerts, and attention monitoring keep cameras and processors active, especially in city driving where triggers are frequent. That creates steady electrical load and heat in systems designed for intermittent use. Over time, this accelerates sensor aging and increases the chances of calibration drift. The damage doesn't feel mechanical. It shows up later as false alerts, warnings that disappear after a restart, or sensors that suddenly need recalibration. You'll notice frequent alerts in situations that don't feel risky, or warnings that appear briefly and vanish. Those are signs the system is working overtime, not smarter. The better approach is selective use. Leave critical alerts on, but disable secondary or redundant warnings when driving in familiar, low-risk environments. Turn them back on for long highway trips or poor conditions. This adjustment takes seconds and costs nothing. Ignoring it can lead to calibration work or sensor replacements that quickly become expensive because of labor and software, not parts. This isn't about safety versus risk. It's about not asking the car to stay on high alert when it doesn't need to. Move on when you're ready for the next one. This time, we're dealing with a feature that affects how the car ages while it's parked. Feature 10. Remote preconditioning. When the car is parked, BMW allows remote preconditioning. Don't leave it enabled as a daily habit when the car is parked for long periods. This feature is meant to prepare the cabin before driving, not to be used repeatedly without context. The issue is background system activation. Preconditioning wakes multiple modules at once: climate control, cooling fans, pumps, and battery management. When used frequently on a parked car, it adds heat cycles and electrical load without the benefit of driving to recharge or stabilize the system. Over time, this accelerates battery aging and puts extra wear on cooling components. The damage doesn't feel obvious. It shows up later as reduced battery capacity, more frequent fan operation, or electrical warnings that seem unrelated. You'll notice the car running fans while parked, higher battery drain between drives, or the system refusing to activate preconditioning at all. These are signs the energy margin is shrinking. Feature 11. Keeping digital key and phone as key always active. For BMW that supports digital key or phone as key, don't leave it permanently active if you don't actually use it every day. This feature keeps communication channels open between the car, antennas, and control modules, even when the vehicle is parked. The issue is background wake-ups. The car repeatedly checks for an authorized device nearby. When conditions aren't ideal, weak signal, phone left nearby, multiple paired devices. The system wakes more often than it should. Over time, this adds parasitic drain and shortens battery life. Like many electrical issues, it doesn't fail all at once. It shows up later as unexplained battery warnings, inconsistent locking behavior, or a car that struggles after sitting. You'll notice delayed locking, random unlock attempts, or higher battery drain between drives. Those are signs the system is staying alert when it should be asleep. The smarter approach is intentional use. Disable digital key if you rely on the physical key, Enable it only when you actually need it, not as a permanent background feature. This takes under a minute and costs nothing. Ignoring it often leads to early battery replacement and time-consuming electrical diagnostics. The expense isn't the feature, it's the troubleshooting. Most BMW problems don't come from one bad drive. They come from features stacking stress quietly, day after day. Electrical load, heat cycles, constant wake-ups. Individually small, collectively expensive. This is where the 10-minute monthly BMW reality check matters. Once a month, glance at battery behavior, note any random warnings, pay attention to idle smoothness, and watch for features activating when they don't need to. 10 minutes a month is 2 hours a year, and it's often the difference between prevention and a surprise repair bill. These issues are not inevitable. They're predictable and they're avoidable. Next, we'll talk on new BMW dealership scams. They don't want you to know the habits and systems. Stay tuned.